Hi, everybody. It's Dale Walsh, the Poetic Warrior from the Mental Health Warriors, and welcome to Straight, Sane, and Sober for Tuesday, the Ides of March, and we're coming up on St. Patty's Day too. And today, I'm delighted to have as our guest the newest mental health warrior is decreed by Adam Duvall, Miss Kim Dunlop, who's a dating coach. She's a uh, how do you say it, Kim? An enneagram?
An Enneagram. An Enneagram specialist or practitioner. So, yeah, Enneagram, which is around our
And,
personalities and how we operate.
and she's basically a self-development Renaissance woman, and I'm looking very forward to having her on the show. And let me just get the introduction, and then we'll be on our way. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm very excited. It's the Ides of March, and in this day, about 2,030 years ago, Julius Caesar was assassinated in the Senate of Rome by Brutus and the conspirators. And it's a big book by William Shakespeare. But speaking of Shakespeare, I'm going to start us off with a poet, and then we'll turn our focus to Kim. Is that okay with you, Kim?
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so this is called Sign of Change from Heaven. Through holes in trees I watch lunar eclipse, contemplating the beauty of your lips, asking Jesus the way I can be free, and how to realize the ultimate me. But I understand rose grows and God knows, fulfilling romance I've always pursued, as through me universe truly shows the essence of love uncovered and nude, naked as a babe at his mother's breast, hungry for nourishment that does sustain development of its infant heart and brain, suckling oblivious of maternal chest, unaware that love is essence of life, no matter how great might be outside strife. And that's what I
Wow.
call a zoonet, which is a modified sonnet. Speaking of Shakespeare, who is famous, his most famous poetry is sonnets, and basically I just like played around with the form and came up with a zoonet, which has different rhyme schemes than a traditional sonnet. But welcome, Kim. How are you?
I'm really great. Coming from Sydney, Australia. We've had a little bit of sunshine in the last couple of days, so that's been lovely, Dale. But we've had a lot of rain over here in Sydney, which is a bit unusual.
So, what's the state of lockdown in Australia?
The lockdown's probably a little bit more flexible nowadays. We seem to be there's a percentage of us that are vaccinated, which allows the country to kind of sort of free flowing. So there seems to be a lot more flexibility around that, and so there's a lot of people operating. And now we have the process of if you get COVID. There's basically just a 7-day sort of, isolation, and then you just got to get tested, and then you just go back to work. So yeah, I mean, I managed to get COVID back in January, but things seems to be sort of flowing and building, and so the government seemed to be, putting a little bit of a plan in place, which sort of allows people to still operate, because as you know, it's just been a very challenging time for everyone worldwide. Business wise as well. It's good to see.
Well, I heard that Australia had like some of the toughest lockdown rules for the longest time. So I guess it must be a real relief to be able to be out from under that authoritarianism or whatever you want to call it. So,
Yeah, there was a period, for different states, for Sydney and Melbourne, where we had a period of 3 or 4 months where we were heavily locked down. So didn't realise that we were one of the toughest. So that's interesting. I kind of felt that others had similar sort of toughness as well, in that it just restricted us a lot in terms of socialising or getting out and about. So
and what percentage of Australia is vaccinated? Because there's been, I don't know if you've seen, but there's been a lot of resistance in certain areas towards the vaccine, and so I think the United States is like at 60 to 70% vaccinated. But is it higher in Australia, or do you know, or what?
I don't know the exact figure, but I understand it's probably about 80%, if not higher. So I would say I'm pretty sure it was around 80 to 90%. So I know that the states were getting it to quite, individual states had quite high figures, but don't know the exact. So
Well, I was just curious about that because I've always admired Australia and I've always been fascinated by it. And one of my ambitions is to get there and to hang out for a year or two sometime.
oh,
So
beautiful.
so why don't you tell us about yourself a little bit? I just mentioned the Enneagram and the dating coach, but I know you have a very diverse and varied background, and I'd love to hear about it. I'm sure the audience would too.
Oh, thanks, Dale. I'm really excited to become one of the warriors as well, and be in the position that you've been in and talking to various people. I feel that given what I've been working on for the last, oh gosh, it's been about 10 years now. So I've just been really delving into the self-development side, and when I spoke to Adam about the mental health warriors, it was something that, when I first spoke to him about it, I was just so fascinated by it, by looking at changing the stigma. And I think the biggest piece, which we all don't realize, is we all have a bit of mental health. And it's about how we manage that. And so, I think it's a really key thing. And so I became really interested in the mind and the brain and started studying, I've been sort of studying and understanding more about how we operate, and about 10 years ago, and really kind of delved into that side of things. And one of the parts was, looking at getting into the Enneagram, and I became a practitioner a couple of years ago. And that fascinates me because it talks about a flavor of personality. It's a dynamic tool which is kind of originates from scientific Greek areas, and it points to different sort of core woundings and how we develop, and how our stages of development. And if you look at sort of, I think a lot of people become familiar with the iceberg. The behavior on the surface is not necessarily what's really truly going on. And so for me, I've got this really deep understanding and wanting to really dive into understanding more about how we operate and how to relate more. And it's really important for me to do that because I just have this passion that that we have certain skills, and that we can look at either updating those skills or look at changing or getting flexibility in order to adapt and relate more with people. And so my biggest focus is really cracking the communication code. So what are we actually communicating? How are we communicating? And what do we really truly want? And I think that's a really, probably a really big piece for me. And I've been working as a developmental coach as well for the better part of like 3 years, if not longer. I've been practicing. But I really, truly love the developmental side because it's really starting to understand what people are, looking at wanting in their life, So yeah, it's a big piece, but I'm happy to expand it, wherever you think you want to take it.
Uh, well, one thing that came up that just popped into my head was when you were talking about skills. Skill is one aspect, but there's also talent and there's also passion, and that those are two like other components that like really seem to me like really contribute to like making you the person you are. It's not just skills because everybody can learn any skill they want to if they really dedicate themselves to it. But the idea of talent and what you're born with and the motivation which comes from the passion and knowing your why, those are also like very interesting components of personality, I think.
Yeah, look, I like that. I like that you present that, because I would actually put the same meaning of talent and skill in the one bracket, but it depends on how we both break that down and what we believe that to be. And so that's the part which we can expand on with conversations when we have conversations with people. And I'll be curious to know, how you use that term, because we could increase a skill to then have a talent in something. We could have a better relationship with our partner by looking at us trying on a certain skill, and whether it's our voice, whether it's our tone, whether it's the way we express our desires or needs. It's and then that then I think creates more passion as well, and it's really unlocking that passion for someone. And I feel like it's they all kind of combine together. I really feel that they sort of sit in. I can become really quite passionate, and sometimes being too passionate could be too much in the eyes of someone who's quite a quiet person. Do you know what I mean? So it's a skill then to kind of be able to relate more with that other individual by just relaxing that and trying on a different skill, which is just being a little bit more humble or a little bit softer. So I mean, I'd love to know what you feel about the word talent and passion, because I love those words, and I think there's so many expressions to a person as well. I really do. And
Well, in answer to you, well, how I use it in my own case is like my talent and my passion are poetry, but my skill has been developed over building an archive of 4,500 poems. So, it's basically talent and skills work together, but I think talent is something that you develop, well, that you develop from within, whereas skill is something that you learn from without. I guess that's the easiest way to sort of like make the distinction. And then passion is sort of like where you how you devote your skills to developing your talent.
yeah, putting the focus on where you place your energy type thing. Is that what you
Right.
mean?
Yeah, I just think the talent is basically from within, and a skill is something that you learn from without. And I've done like a lot of reading and stuff, and basically more and more people are realizing that everything that happens in your external reality is a reflection of your internal reality. So I think that uh,
Definitely.
I mean, basically you have to be lucky to know what you're talented at, because a lot of people, a lot of people have a lot of skills, but some don't have the talent for it. And I just think of my business adventure that I'm taking part in, and they say this 90% mindset and 10% skill set. So the mindset is not only the passion, but it's also the talent and also the uh, the the approach or the direction by which you attack something. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. I might just be confusing things.
No, 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 you're not. And look, just to tap into that, I mean, I've heard before that, and I think that there's some truth to this, that we have three minds. and this, which all sort of sit within us. And, one of our minds is our brain, which sits up here, which we all sort of understand to be. And then we also have another two minds, which one is the heart, and then the other one, which is the gut. So I feel like that they are all interconnected, and I totally agree with you in the sense that it's around mindset. And I suppose, I really like how you said about talent and passion, because a lot of people, and I will throw in another word to you, which I think is really what your soul and your soul purpose. And when you're driven towards, or, you're sitting in your talent, and you're passionate about your talent, and you can see it in the expression of someone, that they're very excited, or there's this connection within. There's a lot of people that haven't really tapped into that. And that's something that I'm very passionate about, is helping people tap into what they want, which is the inner game. And I think that's a really good piece, is looking at the inner game. And that's the focus where I take people, is looking at the inner game, because the inner game is actually driving the outer game. So when we look at, even adding skills, we can update any skill. And so if someone said to me, I want to be happier, I look at that as a skill. I look at that as a purpose. I look at it as a passion. I look at it as a talent, all of those aspects. So I would combine it all. And I sort of say, well, what do you think you need in order to be happy? And they might say, oh, I don't like my job. And I go, okay, so what is it about your job that you don't like? And we can try and break it down to actually then really delve in to what is truly not making them happy. And it could be someone in particular that's not hearing what they're saying within a job. And so when we work out, those missing parts for us, which is what you said, Dale, and I love that. It's what's missing for us on the outside that, we feel that we're wanting to go towards. So, yeah, I think that there's a lot in that. So that we can reflect on, we can look at and go, well, how could I go towards, who could I talk to then go create, a better relationship, or, a better working environment. What is it that we can do or look at changing or tweaking? And that's what I kind of talk to with even people in the dating world. I love my business and I'm very passionate about it. It's something, Dale, that for me, it's about looking at people going towards love. And I have this belief that you can truly draw in the partner that you want, that you desire. But it's also looking at the relationship that we're having with ourselves. And what is the relationship that we're having with ourselves? Are we a happy person, or are we moody? And so it's looking at that and going, how could I update that, or how could I tweak that? Is that something that I really like about myself? So little things like that. We can always stop and reflect.
Well, one thing that came to my mind, I'm just having ideas as you're talking, Kim. That's a very good thing. But basically what I was thinking is that, people underestimate themselves, and like the potential of any individual is basically infinite. So, it's sort of like hard to compartmentalize talents and skills and everything, because, but ultimately the most important thing that everybody wants is love. And that's really something that I think a lot of people don't understand. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. Well, I think a lot of people are reluctant to really delve into love, because true love can be very scary because you're losing control.
Yeah, I love that, Dale. I do. And there's so much truth to that. And I've actually shared with people that if they try certain things on to get flexibility in actually letting their guard down. And when we talk about the guard, it's our beautiful ego, and I'm going to call it the beautiful ego, which is our flavor of personality that protects us to what we believe that we were supposed to be. And what I feel, Dale, is that the scary part is that when we relax that and actually really truly open up to actually loving ourselves more, because we're always so hard on ourselves. We're so judgmental and saying, oh, we should have done this, or I should have done that, and I should be at this position, and I should have this house, or I should be, we're in a society where there's all these layers, and having all these layers, we are constantly looking at ourselves and questioning where we should be and what we haven't had, what don't we have. But if we start to actually love ourselves more and actually go and accept where we're at and truly just sit with that and go, well, what is the time that I need to do in order to reach a certain goal? Or what is it I truly want within a partner to find true love? Because I've been attracting in someone who, a relationship which is not very nice, or it's toxic, and we yell at one another, and is that the environment that I want to be in? Little things like that, we can kind of always just check in with ourselves, and I think it's really important that we check in. And I thought about this the other day, is if we start to do the check-ins with ourselves and actually say, am I happy with where I'm at, or am I happy with this situation? What is it that I'd like to change? What is it I'd like to put in place? How could I express that? And what is it that stops me from expressing that? So there's, it's a tough one, because it takes practice and it does take time to then go towards that. And it is scary. I think, you nailed it when you said that, Dale.
Well, you brought up a good point about people say, I don't have this and I don't have that, and they're discontented because of it. But on the other hand, on the flip side of that is it's important to be happy with what you do have, even as you work towards what you don't have. And I think so many people concentrate on what they don't have, and they're discontented, and they say, well, I don't have a loving wife, or I don't have a, there's a need rather than even desire. But people work out a need, and that's a weakness rather than what they really desire. And so in my own history, I have a history of being trying to be a knight in shining armor for all the women I'm involved with, And
you're trying to be the savior, were you? Are you trying to be the savior?
I've been trying to save them, and nobody can save anybody except themselves. So, I'm in a relationship now, and I'm learning. I learned how to take off my armor and to be naked in front, with my feelings, rather than just using that armor to protect myself from being vulnerable. And I think that's very important. But people say, I don't have this and I don't have that. But on the other hand, it's going to help their attitude and their mindset a lot if they can just say, I might not have this and I'm working towards it, but I do have this. I do have a loving family. I do have a good job I like. I have a nice house or a nice apartment that I enjoy. And I think the importance of being positive, and I'm not talking about Pollyanna happy. It's truly being content with what you got, and that gives you the foundation upon which to spring yourself to get what you really desire.
I agree. And I love what you just shared as well. I just wanted to tap into that around the knight in shining armor. And I really do agree with you. It's about us taking that off. And one of the biggest things, and I'll simplify it, which I found really difficult, and given what you just shared is saying, wanting to help or save, and you can't save anyone, is the giving. So you were always giving to others and over giving sometimes. And then the part which I will be curious to know with your arm up, and as you take that off, that's the part which I feel is the part where you actually receive. So you're actually
Right.
becoming vulnerable by sharing your feelings and actually sharing your true, what you actually feel about a situation. Whereas in the past, you might not have felt that you had a safe place to share that. And so it's beautiful, Dale, because it's actually allowing yourself to actually receive as well. And I want to break it down if there's any women listening on this call. And for many, many years, people would compliment me on my outfits, or, if someone was to give me some flowers, I would find that really hard to receive. And so I would always brush off the comment from a very young mindset. And so what I realized was to integrate that, to look at it, truly integrating it, to actually grow up into the woman that I am. And so that someone who's actually giving me a compliment on the outfit that I'm wearing at a wedding or at, some event, they're actually a giver like me, because they are wanting to give to me a compliment. And I was denying people of that piece when I would actually sort of deflect it or say, oh, this is only a cheap dress, or, oh, thanks. No, I would push it away. And even now what I find is it's still hard to receive flowers, and because I get embarrassed when someone's actually giving to me or giving a present. And my partner gave me flowers for my birthday last year and a present, and it was really hard. So I needed to express that to him, to actually say, oh, it's really hard for me to receive those gifts because I'm always wanting to give to others. So it's an interesting piece, that one, because that's us letting our guard down.
I think it's a social norm, because we were brought up with this idea that it's better to give than to receive. But the very essence of the feminine is to receive and to be receptive and to take everything in. And the yang is the giver and the protector and the nourisher, and the provider. And the woman is the reception and the I guess the woman is nourishing and receptive. And it's very important that I think that one of the problems with society is that this has gotten mixed up, and this idea that you just have to give until you can't give anymore, until you collapse in exhaustion, is false, because ultimately it's a 50. It's just like you can't exhale without inhaling, and you can't inhale without exhaling. And if you try to just keep inhaling, or just try to keep exhaling, then you're going to pass out. So that dynamic of feminine and masculine, the giving and the receiving, but it has to go both ways. The men have to be able to receive too. And I think that's one of the hardest things for men to do in our present society.
I agree. And I worked alongside a lot of men for many, many years. And I totally agree with you, Dale. And I held, and I loved how you said this, I held a masculine energy more so than the feminine. And so I needed to practice that skill. And I practiced the skill of actually sitting in the feminine for many years, to then be able to receive, to sit in the nurturing, to actually be open and trusting. Whereas part of the masculine energy, and we all have access to masculine and feminine energies, It's just how we are, looking at ourselves and really like observing and going, okay, are we always driving things? So sometimes women might be doing the dishes and plus we're cooking. And so we're driving things, in the kitchen. And then other times there's that nurturing and soft and just receiving and just trusting and softening. And so there's so much opportunity for all of us, whether it's male or female, to really look at, whether or not those energies are serving us. At the moment, I'm doing a bit of work which is very much reactive, and it's a project. And it's interesting because the energies are quite strong in the sense that it's just driving things. It's looking at commercial outcomes. And so you look at business with people at the moment, and there's so much pressure being put on people in business. And as that pressure is being applied, people are taking that on. A little bit what we were talking about before is taking on external things that are going on. But I totally agree with you. I think there's so much opportunity for us to consider, how that's really working for us. And as you said, society saying we're having to give. And I created this thing called the Seesaw Effect. And so it's kind of like, it's called, I created this thing called the Seesaw Effect. So basically, okay, the child seesaw in the playground. and so it's if your seesaw is off balance. So if you're giving so much, your seesaw would be off balance. And so how do you bring it back to balance? By actually then receiving. And so if you're actually receiving and also giving, then you can kind of keep the seesaw sort of balanced, right, with an even keel, so to speak. And I came to that realization because I was always giving, and then I would get upset that I wouldn't receive, but I wasn't open to it. So sometimes we need to be open to it and actually share our voice. And I think that's kind of a key thing as well. We need to share our voice with people, whether it's our partners, close people. I'm open to receiving, or I'm open to you cooking dinner, whatever the case might be, I think there's so much opportunity there.
Well, the thing that I mean, we live in a universe of polarity. So, where there's giving, there's always receiving. Where there's hot, there's always cold. Where there's good, there's always bad. But ultimately, it's, I think of the yin yang symbol and how that's perfectly balanced, and that's the goal that people strive to achieve. But on the other hand, you have to take in your own personality, and some people are more giving than others, and some are more receiving than others. But ultimately, if you give too much without receiving, then I feel that you're going to either burn out, or even worse is develop resentment, because you feel that you're always giving and nobody is ever giving back to you, and you sort of get jealous about yourself.
Yeah, and I really like that, Dal, because the way I look at that as well is we have a choice, and we don't realize that we have so much control about what we're choosing. And when I say that, it comes back to the mindset. It comes back to the skill set. It comes back to our talent. And, it comes back to your passion. And if you look at the resentment part, which you shared, and I think there's so much truth in that if you're constantly giving and your personality flavor is a helper, and one of the Enneagram personality types is the helper. And I know my mum is pretty much, similar to this personality flavor, that she's always giving. And so I get her to kind of stop and actually say, look, it's time for you to receive. And it isn't something that we teach ourselves. So it's really then practicing that on, as you say, to release that frustration, to release that upset, going, oh, I'm always giving to that person and they're never giving back to me. Because a part of it, which is the polarity, is sometimes we give to actually receive. And so there's
Right.
so much
It's
in that,
it's a bargain rather than an actual free giving. I
Well,
mean,
it's the unconscious
give to
mind.
to.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the
I
unconscious
didn't mean
mind
that.
that, yeah. It's part of the, unconscious mind, which we might have that internal resentment, but we might not necessarily express it. And so it's whether or not you're being truly honest with yourself and actually saying, oh, I'm okay to just keep giving. But we're all human. And at the end of the day, if someone is giving, ineffectively, someone is actually taking from you. So you could have a friend that's forever sharing with you their story, and you could be, a really sort of quiet personality and just always holding the space and listening for that friend. And then you could get upset that you have a problem that's going on in your life and you go, oh, well, they're never listening to me because they're always sharing their stuff. Well, I look at that and in a positive way and I go, well, okay, well, what is it that stops you from maybe sharing and saying, I'd like you to listen to me? And then if they don't offer that or they can't give you that, then you've then got a realization that it has been off balance. And so that seesaw has been off balance for quite some time. And so it's coming to that realization of going, our needs, our basic needs, and desires are important. And I really, really am so passionate about that. People getting their basic needs met, actually really, truly opening up. And some people don't know how to share that. So we can offer, compassion, and we can offer nurturing to actually support them to actually open up. And knowing that if that person's personality is quite quiet, you could then, change a skill within you and say, I'm actually noticing that I'm speaking a lot. I'll pass it over to you to actually share. And so,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not obsessed, but I think about giving and receiving a lot because people say that I'm like the most I have the most feminine energy of any straight man they know, but I think that's because of my illness and the journey I've been on with schizophrenia, and it's like really made me receptive to other people and also given me like a non-judgmental perspective where I accept people for who they are. And I think that's, people say that that's a very rare quality in a man and maybe just generally, but uh, the fact is that, I really feel that I've given a lot in my life, but and I was one of those who was always giving, and then I would like be in the hospital and say, why didn't anybody give me back anything? I mean, why am I doing this? And it was like, so it, the emotions are very tricky sometimes, but ultimately you have to be happy with yourself. And when you say that you have no control over your external circumstances, I don't believe that because everything comes from within. And I believe that everything is a reflection of your inner self. And, that's very hard for some people to accept or even to consider. But I think that, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And if you can get that kingdom of heaven within you, then you can enlighten other people.
Yeah, and I may have you may have misunderstood what I shared. And just to clarify that, it's what I was sharing was we don't realize that we do have more control to look at changing those little things or tweaking those little things. And as you said, Dale, you've been practicing and, you've created this personality. And whether it's through your illness or the work that you've been doing as a poetic warrior, like that's incredible. And so that's the expression through your talent that you've been creating. You've been creating this life, and through that you've been practicing how you survive during the day, and how you work through those things. And that's what I was really pointing to and saying, that as all of us can look at how we survive and how we want to thrive. And so, as you said, is, when we understand those little parts about giving, we can then look at, taking off the armor, which you beautifully shared, to then receive. So it's those little pieces that we can really tap into. But we just have to start by using our voice. And I think that's a critical part sometimes. But we can also, as individuals, watch non-verbals as well. When people share, facial expressions, but they're not sharing words, we can be aware of those to actually go, something's not right within that person. How could I support them? How could I nurture them? And, how could I change, myself to actually support someone, because I'm feeling more like thriving rather than surviving, and I can see that something shifted within them. So there's so much, I think, that we can see, and look, you even look at other disabilities where people who can't see, but their sensory systems in their mind are so heightened. And I know an incredible lawyer who cannot see, but he is so aware through the sensory of hearing, voice recognition. So that's important for him. So, when we all have, different, we all have different disabilities and different ailments, and, whatever that might be for ourselves individually, it's how we manage that. And that was all that, so I mean, I totally am on the same page as you, and agree that it just takes time and practice and managing how we live.
Right. Well, I thank you for the clarification. I might have interpreted you a little bit, but at this point, I'd just like to say hello to Robert Brooker and Deborah Harrell, and well, thanks for tuning in. And we're reading all your comments, Robert, and they're very interesting. And why don't we shift gears a little bit? And Adam wanted to know what vision you had when you became a dating coach, and also what vision you had as when you joined the Mental Health Warriors.
So my biggest vision is to set people up for success. And so my passion is to actually create more self-aware leaders, people who are more self-aware about the relationship that they're having with themselves. And I've realized over the years that I've always been, like, for 30 years, I've always been looking at people's potential. So actually parking my potential and putting that in the background, but I've always been lifting up others. And that's something that I am so passionate about. And it is something that is my gift or expression. And when I was listening to you before, Dale, and you were sharing about your feminine qualities, what came to me was, the word expression. That's your expression, and it's a beautiful expression. And it's your gift. That's your gift, and how you turn up. And I want to bring and teach people, what their gift is and what their expression is. And then that comes back to what we spoke about in the beginning, which was, the talent and the passion. And that's where it's such a beautiful quality that, you have, and not many people, as you say, might hold that, but they'll have a different unique, way of turning up. And so I want to help people tap into their own unique style, and really unlock that to actually pull out that passion. So yeah, so that's my thing. I want to crack the communication code.
Well, they say never two without three. So we had skills, talent, and now you brought up a whole new area, which is gifts. And that's I don't know if you want to go into this, but that seems to be like the triumvirate of what the soul wants is talent, skill, and gifts. And I feel I feel very gifted from the Lord, for like many things that I've done, and just the fact that I made it through to 66 at this point, because I think most of the people with schizophrenia, they have like a shorter life and everything, and I feel very fortunate to have been able to live as long as I have and as happily as I have with my diagnosis. But I think my real gift is just getting people to be themselves, and I think that's what you're talking about when you say, bring out their true selves, and that's the real gift, is to be able to help people become themselves, and to be to realize their potential and to see their potential. And I admire that about you, Kim.
And I admire you, Dale, and I think that's just absolutely beautiful, what you just shared, and to become their potential, like, it's just beautiful. It actually bring a few tears to my eyes. Yeah, it's beautiful because, and I just want to acknowledge you in the sense that you've been working on this for yourself, and as you said before, no one can do it for you. And I just really want to admire you for being able to work through that, and it takes a lot of courage. It really does. And to take ownership as well, because when you look at your gifts or your expressions, and I remember meeting Dale, a gentleman in a bar, and he had a hearing aid, and I intuitively could sense that he hadn't integrated the hearing aid, and he had it for many, many years. And I kind of pointed to it in his ear, and I said, if you look at this and actually look at loving that part of you, and loving that's what's been given to you, then that will support you in looking at becoming your potential. And he kind of looked at me because I pointed to something that no one else had kind of pointed to. And we became friends, and I supported him and helped him in certain ways. And he really liked that because I was in my feminine, and I was offering that nurturing and compassion. And I think there's so much that we can do with people, because we're so, quick to judge, that we need to stop and reflect and actually go, right, what is that person going through? Is that behavior really their normal behavior? Are they just acting out, or is there something that I can help them with? And so that is something that I'm really passionate about, is really helping people to kind of unlock that, to release the emotions that we have, which we're holding. And I loved how you mentioned, with the men as well. And so I take my hat off to you, Dale, because you're practicing doing that with your partner. You're practicing sharing your emotions. You're practicing being vulnerable in the face of your partner. And it's beautiful. It's really nice. And that will give you probably 10 or 20 more years.
I hope so. But, then a side thought that came to me, but what you were just saying is, basically, in order to be able to love yourself, you have to be able to be at peace and love your shadows, and the things that you're ashamed about, and things that you're embarrassed about, and guilty about, and that's extremely hard to do, because they're so filled with negative emotions, that to be able to look at those things and say, well, these are the things that made me the person I am today, and I'm not going to like put myself down because I'm going to like fulfill my destiny, and to and to go forward despite these shadows and despite these wounds and despite the shame and guilt that I feel. And that's one thing I've sort of tried to learn how to do. It's a process. I haven't like completely done it, but I feel I'm like in a much better position than I was, say, 10 years ago. But
And I can help you with a few things as well, Dale. I'd be delighted to share a few things, because I think that what you just shared as well is beautiful, because that's the starting point. That's the starting point, which is what I was saying before, which is we do have some awareness, and I might have chosen the wrong word before when I shared it, which was around having that control. But it's just that awareness and going, okay, am I putting myself down today? What is that? And even my partner says to me, Kim, don't be so nasty, because you know, um, a couple of my dresses are a little bit tight at the moment, and so I was being a bit nasty to myself, Dale. and so I was like, typical woman thing. My dresses are too tight. Oh gosh, I'm not. I'm chubby. And so he said, stop being nasty to yourself. And so if we look at that and go, that's so lovely that he's saying, oh, you look beautiful. And so why are you being so nasty to yourself? So yeah, there's that reflection that we can stop and actually go, well, what is it about that? Why am I putting myself down? Which is the shadow, as you said. And it's looking at those shadows and actually going, let's look at loving ourselves more and going, well, what is it that I'd like to change about that? And so I've been putting steps into play to actually, look at my food and, exercise more and just create that balance. So that's all, it's just going back to the word balance.
right. Well, this gets to the very essence of the mental health warrior philosophy and desire, which is to end the stigma. And one of the things that I had for like so many years was a shame and a guilt about my illness. And until I could really like deal with that and look it in the face, and I wasn't getting better. I was just like flatlining at acceptance and resignation. But ultimately, this is the essence of stigma: is a self-imposed shame and guilt, and and putting yourself down, and putting and all that. And that's what we, as the mental health warriors, are trying to do, is like to end that stigma, and to really like exercise control over our thoughts so that we can be positive despite the negative things we've gone through.
Yeah, I like that. I really do. And it is, it's being, nicer to ourselves. It's actually just being kinder to ourselves. Um, and it's finding someone that has, the capacity to understand that as well, because we do live in a world where people uh, can be judgmental, can be harsh in the way that they use their voice or language. And it's because they don't understand, Dale. And I think sometimes we could then share if we notice someone's reaction. So rather than taking on that external reaction and personalizing it, we can actually then seek to understand what they actually mean by it. And just because there's positive intentions with everything that people say, and there's then that opportunity for us to look at, if we want, depending on where we're at, to consider whether or not we want to actually look at changing that about, that relationship, or what healthy boundaries do we want to put in place, little things like that. So, yeah, I think the mental health stigma, I think it's an amazing I think it's an amazing thing, the mental health warriors. I think it's really great how everyone's got their own unique style, And, you know, you've brought this poetic warrior in, which is beautiful. And you have, you know, the opening of your poem. I love it. And it's that connection through your talent and your passion. And it's actually fueling, and I'm going to use that word, it's fueling your soul. And this is what fuels my soul, Dale, is actually talking about this sort of stuff to bring more awareness to the world, that we all have dark days or good days, you know, and whatever that might be. How do we support one another? How do we support ourselves? What resources do we need? Where do we want to be? What do we need to accept as to where we're at in order to help us actually move forward? Yeah, so I'm so looking forward to, you know, bringing a different edge and and yeah, it's exciting.
Well, we didn't even get to anagrams, but this has been fascinating and I'm sure interesting and compelling episode of Straight, Sane, and Sober for our audience. I know it's been for me, and we have about 4 minutes left, but so I just want to thank you, Kim, for coming on, and welcome to the Mental Health Warriors. And I'm sure we'll be interacting a lot in the future, and we'll have you back on the show sometime very soon. And just thank you for your understanding and your insights. And why don't you like to, is it? Oh well, how do people get in touch with you first of all?
So one of my businesses is the Dating Doctor. So it's over in Australia in Sydney. So if you just look up www.thedatingdoctor.com.au, you can reach out to me. But I also do work with corporates as well. And so I've got another business. But yeah, feel free to reach out to www.thedatingdoctor.com.au. Yeah, I'd be happy to have a chat. So yeah. Thank you
And
so much, Dale.
Before we go, why don't you like sum up what's your greatest lesson that you learned so far as a dating doctor? Is there anything that really stands out that you can like summarize in a couple of minutes? Or
Yeah, I can.
what's your what was your revelation from your dating doctor practice?
I think the biggest practice from the dating doctor is really understanding who you are and how you operate. And when you understand your energy, your personality, your gifts, your expressions, your talents, and your passions, it's also then looking at taking that to actually relate with others and having an awareness about someone else as well, and how we can actually relate better with people by sometimes looking at changing a couple of things. And when I say that, you're not changing who you are, you're just kind of opening up the armor a bit. You're opening up the armor,
Right.
and because the armor is the protection, and we've been protecting ourselves for a long time. And as we protect ourselves, we sometimes project a different message. And when we're projecting a different message, it could be taken the wrong way, or, you know, seen in a different way, or not that softness that's coming through in, you know, someone's personality and that love or unconditional love. And so, yeah, I would, it's probably a learning that I've learnt through setting up the business is we are all looking for two things: to love and to be loved. And I had that understanding before I set up my business, but I truly believe that, you know, we can have beautiful relationships. It's just about us doing the work as well. And so us doing the work and playing our role and our part in the relationship, and talking about what we need and what we desire. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
That's a great summary, and thank you very much. And I think we're just about an hour. And thank you very much, Kim. It's been a great honor and privilege to be able to talk to you, and we'll look for you in the future.
Thank you so much for having me on.
I'm looking very forward to see what you're going to do with the Mental Health Warriors. So have a great day, everybody. And let me just put this on. We'll see you next week.